Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Nvidia GTX1060. So this was actually released pretty fast as far as I'm concerned. I was expecting them to leave this out for a little while. I was also almost expecting them to kind of let AMD have the 480 and not necessarily concentrate on this for a little while. So I'm actually a bit surprised that it's out so quick, to be fair, but I'm going to save lots of those conversations for a TTL length conclusion if you're interested. Now, in the range, the spec wise, when this pops up and I can bring you up all the stuff, you can easily see here that we have the 1080, the 1070 and then the 1060 that you can have a look at. And I thought I would put all of the details up like this just so that you can get a really good grasp on what's going on. I mean, if you have a look, it's pretty much, the 1060 is pretty much half a 1080. So you've got two processing clusters versus 4. You've got 10 streaming multiprocessors versus 20. You've got 1280 CUDA cores versus 2560. It's all pretty much half of a 1080. But with this, rather than having just 4 GB of video memory, you've now got 6, which is actually up 2 gig. But something that Nvidia have been talking about consistently, they've been consistently comparing the 1060 with the old 980. So I thought I would just make another little kind of graphic for you where you can see the 1060 is on the far left, 1280 CUDA cores, boost clock 1.7, etc. And then you've also got the 980 and the 970 there as well. So with that, you can see it's not quite half the amount of CUDA cores, but you can see there is a good kind of 550 megahertz bump on the actual clock speed that it's running at. But obviously, don't just think, don't just think it's running quicker, so it's instantly going to be faster, because we've always had people thinking, for argument's sake, my i3 at 5 gigahertz is going to be better than your i5 at sort of like, do you know what I mean, lower score, and it doesn't always work like that. It tends to get a little bit, people kind of get real focused on core speeds rather than architecture. But I will bring you in for a nice and close look at the card. We're going to take it apart for you as well. So we've got some nerd porn going on. We've got benchmarks, but you can obviously, if you want, go and have a look at the Overclock 3D website. And then I'm going to try and get as many of my thoughts out as possible in as small a period of time, which, let's face it, is never that quick. But let's move on. So, an up close look at the card. Right, so this section, we don't actually have a window, which we will talk about later. Normal blower style fan. It does feel, I mean, the old 960 didn't feel as nice as this, is the best way I can put it. Just to bring a 960 in to show you. That's the old black one. This doesn't light up, and we have an inboard power connector. When we look at the 1060, what we can see is we've got an outboard power connector, which I'll explain to you how they've done that. But also, we've still got the shortened PCB. So it does give you the illusion that it's a bigger card, but rather than having the power connector in a silly place, they've now bumped it out. We've got a nice section here where this does feel very much like the cooling plate that you have at the end of the 1080 and the 1060, which again, I can grab one and show you. So it all does feel and look very similar. But obviously we've only got the 6 pin. This is the 8 pin on the 1080. I bring the 1070 in, that's an 8 pin as well. But you get the idea. So it's a little bit shorter. The GeForce logo does light up green. On the older one it didn't, that's just printed. So we've got a kind of a lovely bit of brand continuation there. They do look very similar, although we have got a slightly more pronounced silver part over the top of the 1060, but nevertheless I think it does look very nice. But what's going on underneath? So the dismantle part. Now yes, you can see cables and stuff hanging out, because this one's a little bit more difficult to be able to strip. But when we take the top cover off, there is a gap. There is no little plastic window or anything there. I actually think this looks a bit Star Wars. I don't know whether you know the ship that I'm on about, but yeah, this has got a very kind of Star Warsy, maybe even Star Trekky kind of feel. Now, obviously, we've seen the card all together, but you can see the little strip here for your LED, and then the bit up this end where we could see the grills, that is actually just bolted on. It's literally just there for looks, to make it look like it's cooling heat sinks, sorry, like MOSFETs and stuff, like it would have been on the bigger cards. Then when the heatsink, the main body of the heatsink comes off, this was the bit that you could see through the window, so this will get quite warm. That kind of aspect to it is very 480-esque, and I don't mean the AMD one, I mean the very old Nvidia one. Get round and underneath, you get a nice copper pad. No vapor chamber or anything like that in there. Those quite a simplistic design. I think it looks kind of nice. Anyway, when we get down to the main nitty gritty, the cable is normally up and around here like this, but what I've done is left it off so that I can show you how everything works. So actually kind of right, there we go. So this part, this is actually all metal. So the part that pokes out the back of the card, this is actually solid metal as well. So it does give it a nice sturdy feel. It's like having a really nice brace on it. It's not a graphics card that the reference one anyway, it's not one you're ever going to get any kind of sag on unless your PCI Express connector is a bit wonky or loose, or even if you've not tightened up the back of the card into your case properly. But it obviously does give it the extra length because it's a short PCB when it's actually in the case itself. So it does give us give it a more expensive feel, is probably the best way I can put it. But this is the reference naked PCB itself. You can see up here the connectors are literally just soldered in. Now, if you were a moddery kind of guy and you wanted to water cool a reference one, I could easily see you being able to fix something like this together. But I would actually be kind of interested in just wiring up my connector to the power supply straight into the card itself. So you would solder the ends straight into the card, and then you would do your heat shrink and your braiding direct to that. So you wouldn't even have a connector on the card. Now it's going to be a bit weird because the cables are all going to come out kind of together, but you know, there's a way around not having to have this, or you could solder it in and then you could have a connector somewhere else. But anyway, yes. So one thing we can see is we know it's a 6GB card, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chips on there, but amazingly there are 2 spare ones at the top here. So will we see an 8GB later? Maybe. Was 8GB planned all along and then they've cut it back? You can certainly see along here with the PCB that there's a lot of componentry that they've left off. Now if this is cost cutting, I don't know, maybe the board is over-spec'd, or maybe it's prepared to put something else on later. Maybe, you know, this could have been the PCB for a Mini 970 or a 980 maybe, I don't know. But anyway, we are digressing. So connectors around the back, you've got 3 display ports, a HDMI, and then you've got the DVI. The look around the back, which you could see beforehand anyway. But that is our strip down. Okie dokie then. So we've done all the looky-atty sort of stuff, and you've seen that there's no SLI bridges, and it's not supported. There is no official SLI on this. I'm actually not 100% sure how I feel about that, and I think I need to save that for the actual conclusion itself. But the other thing that I've noticed, and this kind of leads me into where I'm going with the next stage of the review, is one of the things that Nvidia have done recently, they've introduced GPU Boost 3. And GPU Boost 3 pretty much removes any necessity or for you to necessarily overclock it, because it does it for you. It's an auto overclock, which is just ridiculously good. They understand the hardware that well, they can get the absolute most out of it with that kind of software, whether it's on a driver level or whatever it is, but it works incredibly well. And even with the 1070s and the 1080s, consistently, the maximum overclock was within sort of about 15 to 25 megahertz difference. So there was absolutely no need to overclock it. Weird thing is, with this, and I've looked and I've hunted high and low, there is no mention of GPU Boost 3. And with the boost, I did end up managing to push the overclock up considerably further, confirming the fact that there is no GPU Boost 3 on the Founders Edition card. Now, I did manage to manually overclock it to 2100 megahertz just by increasing the power limit and then just winding the dial up. And if you increased the power limit and didn't overclock it, the boost didn't really kind of move further. And when you overclock them without GPU Boost 3, you're kind of offsetting where the boost starts. So you kind of wang it up a bit and then it boosts itself that little bit further still. I do wish there was a way to just turn the boost either off completely or on permanently. But then that would always then, and it has been mentioned, but I do need to explain that the boost is there to be able to fluctuate, to be able to save power, because it's when they downclock, that's when they save loads of power because they're not doing anything on the desktop or in a less stress portion of the actual like game or something that you're playing. But the reason why I'm bringing such attention to the GPU Boost 3 is I think in the 1060, which for the most part for people out there is going to be a fit and forget card, that I think it's been a bit of a mistake leaving it out. With all the 1070s and 1080s, it was all there straight out of the box and did it for you. And they're the type of people that a lot of people are going to want to have a play. I'm not saying that the 1060 people don't, but it's a segment of the market where it's a cheaper end card and people are buying these sort of cards more often to just play with and not necessarily want to bother overclocking. So if they did that, then you could have a card that was overclocking itself, so you would get the best performance. So it does make me wonder whether it's something that they don't want them to be running that fast for a long period of time. It's a very strange question, and this is going to come in the Asus review, which will be on the channel as well. I'll try and remember to put a link underneath or for it to pop up. But when because I'm filming this the day before the Nvidia NDA, but I've actually tested already 3 cards. So I'm making this review having thoroughly spent a lot of time with the other graphics cards. And weirdly, Nvidia haven't got GPU Boost 3, but the Asus Strix 1060 does. And I did wonder whether it was just an enormous overclock, but I asked Asus and it's enabled. So whether it's something that's just disabled in the BIOS of the actual card, I don't know. But I can say that the Strix, even though it does have a fairly meaty overclock, out of the box, it's running at 2050 megahertz with the GPU Boost 3 running. And it was consistently averaging above 2000 megahertz as well. So the fact that they decided to, as far as I'm concerned, kind of cripple their Founders Edition card is a little bit strange to me. Yeah, I personally, I don't understand it. So anyway, so you know, with this, I've had to manually overclock it, which is why when you see the results in the graphs, you understand why randomly we've actually got a Pascal series card with 2 results, whereas with all of the other 1070s and 1080s, I've not bothered because it would have been a waste of time. So with the card itself, the cooler is actually pretty good. And when I show you the temperature results, that's 70 degrees and that was very cool. Very cool. It's very quiet is the most important thing. It doesn't make a lot of noise. And that is literally just left to its own devices. I did nothing to it. 70 degrees, and what we do to test the temperatures is I put Unigine on and I let it loop for just forever and a day. Well, we did it for an hour to really get some heat into it, and I always do my temperature tests first as well, get some really good heat into it, and then I do all of the benchmarks afterwards. So I give it kind of a good thorough warm-up period, and we can also test the fan speeds and yeah, it's just a really nice way just to get a good start on it. So 70 degrees, which, I mean, to be honest with you, with a reference card, it's doing very well, because the Nvidia software will be happy to boost it right the way up to 80 degrees. So, you know, the fact that it's doing well, it just goes to show you there's not a lot going on there. It's not using a great deal of power, so you've not got a great deal of heat to dissipate. When we move on to 3D Mark, one of the things here is you need to look for the 980s, and also you need to look for the 480, because as far as I'm concerned, the 980 is what Nvidia are comparing it to, but we are kind of interested to see where this is going to be coming in with the AMD offering, which is around the same sort of level. Yes, I know the Nvidia is more expensive, but let's face it, that's Nvidia tax for you. So when we come here, we can see that it is just a bit below the 980s. But as you can see, the MSI 980, that was an overclock, and you've got the GTX1060 from KFA2, which was a Hoth card, which was just ridiculous out the box. The Asus Strix, it would actually be just in front. So just to give you a kind of idea there, we were literally running out of space on the graphs, and we wanted to put the other 1080s at the top. But we've also mixed in a bit, just to give you an idea for those of you that might be thinking about upgrading. You've got 950s and things like 380s and stuff near the bottom, and even you can see how much quicker this is than an absolute screaming edge 970, because the 970 result we've got down at the bottom there was a very fast 970 with a big overclock on it as well. So the 1060 is noticeably quicker than a 970, and really is trading places and kind of getting above the 980s as well. When we go on to Sleeping Dogs, now one thing I will say, because I always forget, is I don't think that we've not done a lot of testing. We just don't put a lot of it in the reviews, because I would literally be here forever talking about it. So if you want to go and have a look at all the graphs, pop over to the Overclock 3D website. We've actually got the Founders Edition review, but we've also got the Asus Strix review, which I will be making a video about as well, and it will be on the channel. And we've also got a little itty bitty kind of not bottom of the range, but kind of one of the lower end 1060s as well from Zotac. I say Zotac Amp Plus, but the reason why I say one of the lower end ones, because it's a short PCB, and it's not got like a monstrous cooler or overclock on it or anything. So I'm kind of expecting the price to come in quite competitively as well. So go and have a look on the Overclock 3D website for the other reviews and for the all of the benchmarks for the Founders Edition. But with this, you can see it actually comes in just below the Asus Fury, which is a DC3 card. It was one below the Fury X, but it was the one where the aftermarket people like Asus and MSI were actually allowed to put it onto custom PCBs. So you've got that, and again, you can see it's in front of the 970. And again, this is pretty much on the money for a normal 980. If you then overclock the 980, then that's when you get like your KFA2 results and stuff like that. Now, I did overclock the 1060, which is what you can see in the 3D Mark result. You can see that the overclock is above, but I didn't go through and run all the games or anything like that, because I would have just, it doubles your testing time. And to be fair, I couldn't be bothered. Right, and then we move on to Hitman, which with Hitman, and this is one of the things I was deliberately trying to bring you a bit of balance, because with Sleeping Dogs, the 1060 was clearly above the 480, even with its overclock and, you know, playing with all the power adjusting and going beyond, you know, the PCI Express limits for power and all that type of stuff, literally ringing the 480's neck. In 480, in Sleeping Dogs, the 1060 was in front. But in Hitman, it's the opposite way round. In Hitman, the 1060 is actually below the 480 consistently. Now, Hitman's a new game, which is one of the reasons why the graphs aren't massive, but again, it is something to point out that the Nvidia aren't in front on everything. Now, with power draw, this is something that I wanted to leave to the end, because it does go to show you how good the architecture is and is getting, because we're talking about something with 980 level performance. yet the entire system was only pulling 240 watts from the wall. It's a bit of a weird one. I mean, you can go up a little bit further up and you can see the 480 at 288 watts. So that's on this system, and you're looking at 48 watts difference. But obviously with the overclock, you're looking at 332 watts because it does get quite power hungry. But then you've got like the 1080s and the 980s around the 350 watt mark. So if we were to say that the 980 would have been 340 watts, this has the same performance and it's like 100 watts less. It's literally just sipping electricity from the wall. It's a bit mental. Now if we move on to a conclusion, I wanted to restart because it just helps me find stuff when I actually come to like do the video editing and stuff. So the award that we're going to give it, to be honest with you, it's a gamer's choice, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. Yes, you do get 980 level performance for, we'll say, reasonable money. But the thing is like there are, if you look around, you can find cheap 980s now. Now with the 1060, you're going to be pulling less power, and you are buying a much more advanced product. But if you're just going for, you know, absolute, just want quick, you don't care how you get it, you just want frames per second. To be honest with you, the 980s are still fairly credible, and they are pretty close. If you can get one of the cards that's like got a huge overclock on it or something like that, then to be honest with you, like the Hoffs for argument's sake, or you get yourself an MSI and you are specifically going to manually overclock it yourself, then you can get just in front of this sort of performance, and you may be able to save yourself a few quid. But, and this is where it's a bit of a mixed bag, if you're going to go and buy something like the 980 Strix cards, which they were very good cards and they were very quiet, but they didn't have, you know, humongous overclocks on them out the box, not like the newer range stuff, which are just kind of like balls to the wall. But the older kind of gen stuff was a little bit more conservative, and they were very cool and calm and collective, and they give you very consistent scores, but they did need a bit of an overclock. But I mean, in that respect, when you're looking at those cards, one of the 1060s is probably a bit of a better choice for you. When we do talk to you about the Asus Strix review, I mean, that is a cracker of a card. The other thing with this that I'm a bit mixed. They've now blocked off SLI. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, it's probably because that, you know, it might have ended up being quicker than a 1070 for less money. I don't think it would have been a 1070 for less money, because these are coming in at 275. If you've got like a real cheapy one for 250 quid, it's not going to be like a barnstormer of a card. So I reckon you're probably going to be looking at somewhere along the lines of sort of like 275 to 300 for a decent one of these. And by the time you've bought two, you are going to be looking at 1080 money. And will you get double the performance? Well, it's never double, and there's always kind of a bit of a mixed bag with it. But the problem is that for a lot of us, one of these is something that we get, and then maybe when a cheaper one comes up later on, or one of our friends upgrades, that's when we grab the second one and the SLI bridge comes out. Now, the SLI bridge isn't there, but you do have the DirectX 12 explicit multi-GPU option, which is something we're going to have to test when it becomes a little bit more mature. But what that essentially does is allow you to run two cards, and you don't have to have them bridged, because you can actually with those run them with two completely different graphics cards. But you can just have two graphics cards in, and all the DirectX 12 mumbo jumbo in the background just uses both graphics cards. So whether Nvidia are kind of hoping that by removing the SLI bridge that it's going to push developers to harness that a little bit more, I don't know. But it's all a bit kind of hearsay, and to be honest with you, I'm not that much of a fan of it. I think for the sake of it, they should have just wanged the extra two things on there and just let us have a play. It's now making me want to find out if it does work, because I'm pretty sure if one of the other manufacturers wanted to, they could probably slap some bridges on, but I'm almost positive that it's going to be something that Nvidia's blocked off. So I've kind of got, I'll be honest, I've kind of got a little bit of a woo feeling about that. The other thing that I wasn't like 100% sure about is why has it not got GPU Boost 3? I know a lot of people have been going, oh, there's no overclocking on it now, but it's not that there's no overclocking with the GPU Boost 3 cards, it's that it's actually done it for you. Now, there's two ways to look at that, but I think for a lot of people, it would have been really good that you could have just had a quicker card and you didn't have to mess around with it. When it does come to the GPU Boost 3, I would actually say I would really like to see a way in the GeForce experience that if you are an overclocker, you can just disable it as well. There has to be a way that Nvidia can allow it or disallow it in the GeForce experience. So those with one of these, you can just go and turn it on and it'll overclock itself. Or if you've got a 980, you can 1080, sorry, you can disable it and you can actually try and get the enjoyment of overclocking it yourself manually. Although to be honest with you, it is so very good that it's almost not worth bothering with. So with the 1060, I'm going to try and recap now because it is a bit of a mixed bag. For a small card, it really doesn't use a great deal of power, and you are now getting 980 levels, and I mean like a normal 980 level of performance consistently. It's only really the 980 overclock cards, or that you've either manually done yourself or you bought something like the Hoff that it doesn't quite get to. But a stock or a mid-range 980, absolutely, this is faster, less power, more VRAM. And you'll see with the other cards as well that once the vendors actually get on them, they are consistently great. With the Founders Edition ones, I don't know how many of them they're going to end up selling, to be honest. I do like it. It's a great card. It's also a really nice, got the green theme if you're on it. And to be honest with you, I do like the look of the cooler. It does perform very well. And for water cooling, the moved power connector isn't great, but to be honest with you, more people are going to buy these and forget about them. So the fact that they've actually bothered to move that power connector up to the end so it makes your cable tidy and tidier, I actually think they deserve a big thumbs up for that, because that's a little thing that annoys some people because it's different and it's a shock tactic. But for the most people out there, moving that connector will actually end up making your rig look tidier. So you've not got cables kind of hanging off the end of your card, or it fits in with the normal kind of PC theme a lot better, and it's something that I've never seen done in this way before, and I actually really like it. So 275 quid, yes, it is a little cracker. Take all of the info that I've given you about prices and performance, and if you're thinking about buying one of these, the best thing that you can do is take what I've said, go and have a look around and see whether for you it would be better for you to go and get a slightly older card or get one of these. I think for the most part of you that are out there, one of these will be better than going the 980 route and just going for grunt. Especially once you see what the aftermarket people have done with this as well, because there's a lot going on with this, and to be honest with you, the reference version doesn't really get as much from it as like the 1080 and the 1070 Founders Editions did. This one is kind of like a bit limp-wristed, but for the actual 1060 underneath, there's a lot more going on there, and yeah, the aftermarket cards are just going to be amazeballs. So the only other thing that we've not really spoken about is the 480, and I've tried to stay away from the 480 a little bit because, to be honest with you, for the most part it is in front, but it also demands more money from you, and that's where the Nvidia tax comes in. So what you're going to have to do is to decide what you want. I personally don't think now, from the testing that I was doing with the 480s, don't think that you should be buying a reference 480. So the you know, like the original Radeon design card, I'm not really sold with that. Now all this stuff about the power started coming out and they're having to change it with drivers, I'm not there. I would be considering, if you're going to be looking, 1060 480 aftermarket cards, because they're the ones that you want to watch. And where we've not really had any 480 aftermarket cards come through yet, it's actually still an exciting time, and it's something that I am personally going to be looking forward to testing, because we've got all the graphs, They just need to slide in there, and we'll see how much better the third-party cards are. But for now, 1060, yes, gamer's choice. I've done a lot of waffling. I do apologise, but I just have to try and get as much information out of my head to you as possible. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget, go and have a look on the Overclock 3D website to see all the graphs, all that type of stuff. We've also got the Asus Strix 1060, and it's their literally their top of the range 1060 Strix overclock as well. It's going to be just coming in at just over 300 quid, but it actually comes in with the 1070/1080 PCB and cooler as well. So it's literally as good as Asus have got for the 1060 for the moment, probably will ever have. So that's an exciting one. And then we've also got a cheaper one as well, which is one of the smaller Zotac 1060s as well. So we've got a couple of other reviews out there for you to give you a bit of balance. So please go and have a look at those. And I have more videos to film. So for now at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with the Nvidia GTX 1060 Founders Edition review out. Ding!